I thought it had been pretty clear to see that the Spurs have been rebuilding for a couple of years now, and it hasn't been the most traditional rebuild, so I've seen people say maybe they're directionless, or they need to blow it up, they need to do this and this. Why is DeRozan still on their team? Why is Aldridge on their team? Why are they still trying to win? Why are they doing this and this and this and this? But I think it's been pretty clear that they have been rebuilding for the last year or two. DeRozan obviously was still a key part. Patty Mills, the GOAT himself, is now gone. Patty, come on, just drop a like for Patty. Just drop a like for Patty, because he's the GOAT. That's all I'm going to ask. Just drop a like for Patty if you're a Spurs fan. Subscribe to the channel if you're not. Subscribe to the channel anyway. I'm just going to get that out of the way. I normally wait, but Patty, Rudy Gay, LaMarcus Aldridge, all of those veteran guys are now gone, but it's not like this is a team that wasn't already pushing a youth movement, which I don't think people quite understood. You just look back at last season, and Dejounte Murray was their lead guard alongside DeMar DeRozan at just 24. He had an increased role, an increased usage rate, and improved. Keldon Johnson at just 21 also had an increased role and increased usage rate and started pretty much every single game. You had Jakob Poeltl after LaMarcus Aldridge left. Even before LaMarcus Aldridge left, he was starting every game, started over 50 games, and improved their defense. Lonnie Walker, 22. Derek White, 26. Devin Vassell, Luka Samanic, first and second year players, also started several games. If you look through the minutes played, the top 10 minutes played, 7 of those 10 players were 26 and under. The only ones that weren't were DeMar DeRozan, Rudy Gay, and Patty, and 2 of those guys were coming off the bench. So this idea that the Spurs weren't actually rebuilding was kind of crazy to me. They were clearly doing it. They were doing it in a little bit of a different way, and probably winning more games than people would have anticipated, and maybe than was ideal, considering this is a team that, I have mentioned it before, I think they've got a wealth of talent. Well, maybe a wealth is an overstatement, but they've got a lot of nice, young, talented players. Maybe a couple of those guys could turn out to be stars. We don't know what Josh Primo's going to be. Jock Landau, watch out for him, but we don't know what he's going to be. Dejounte Murray and Keldon Johnson at the moment are probably the most intriguing, and Devin Vassell I still have high hopes for. Maybe those guys could turn out to be stars, but as of right now, there's no one that you could look at and be like, oh, that's a definite star. They've got a lot of nice role players at the moment, maybe above average role players. That's what you're seeing with this team, and it actually kind of reminds me of the Atlanta Hawks. That's the difference that one star player can make. That's all it takes. You look at this Spurs team and people go, oh, they're not very talented. All they need is one star player in next year's draft after a poor year or going towards the bottom of the lottery, and all of a sudden, similar to the Atlanta Hawks who have Trey Young, and then a ton of really solid young players, but none that stand out. DeAndre Hunter maybe, but we're not getting into that. The Spurs could be the same, where if they add a star to this mix, and all of a sudden Keldon Johnson and Dejounte, if they're looked at as complementary players, that's when they look really good. I hope I kind of explained that well enough, but I think the Spurs have a nice young core, but they need to put someone in there that can be the centerpiece, unless Dejounte Murray or Keldon or one of those guys can take the leap, which we'll talk about those guys because it's still worth noting. As of right now, I want to talk about Keldon Johnson and Dejounte Murray. I'll get into the other guys, but these are the guys that probably stand out. They do stand out. Dejounte Murray is one that does intrigue me. He's heading into his biggest season yet. He's improved every single season. He took a big leap last year, and now DeRozan is left, so he is the guy. He's not just the guy in the backcourt. He's just the guy, full stop. He's never been the most aggressive scorer or taken a ton of shots. He's always been someone that kind of gets to his spot. He shoots around nearly 50% from the mid-range area, from the 16 feet to the three-point line, which is really good. Really good. He's good at finishing at the rim again. He's also in a top percentile for that. So he does things in his spots well. When he gets downhill, he's hard to stop. He's athletic. He's got a 6'10 wingspan. He can pull up from mid-range as well, as I mentioned. He does those things well, but it's about doing the things that he hasn't notoriously done well and improving on them. Three-point shot took a bit of a dip this season, but in fairness to him, he took a lot more shots, so he improved the volume. The efficiency took a hit. So if he can somehow level that out and be a 34 to 35% three-point shooter. And one thing I also want to see from Dejounte is attacking the rim and getting to the free throw line. It's one thing to finish at the rim well, that's cool, but he needs to get to the free throw line a little bit more. I look at a Ja Morant and see similar kind of prototypes in terms of those athletic, lean kind of guards that can get downhill and attack the rim. Ja's a better passer and probably a better finisher, but I see some similarities. But the main difference is Ja gets to the free throw line six times a game, and he's not the only one. There's a lot of guards that get there 6 to 7 to 8 times a game. Dejounte's only getting there twice a game. If he can improve that, he's got all the intangibles intangibles. He shoots well enough from the line, so there's no kind of fear factor there. He finishes well at the rim, so there's no reason for him to not be getting downhill consistently. I believe with some more spacing, they brought in Jock Landau, who can space the floor. There's going to have guys at times where they're going to have 4 players all across the floor. Doug McDermott can shoot the floor. There's not going to be DeRozan anymore. So they're going to have guys all around Dejounte that can shoot the ball, which should help him thrive. That's an underrated aspect of what the Spurs have been able to do. Even with Zach Collins, whenever he gets healthy, another guy that can shoot the ball. So he's got his perfect opportunity to get downhill and just attack the rim. I want to see him get to the free throw line more. We already know he's a fantastic defender, one of the top handful of guard defenders in the league, 6'10" wingspan, incredibly disruptive. You don't want to go up against him. You just don't. There was that one performance, was it against the Warriors, where he had like 7 steals? It was insane. I watched that game. He was everywhere defensively. I think it was against the Warriors, but either way, he's had a few big performances, and in general, one of the best guard defenders. I still think he's got a lot of room to improve. If he can get to the free throw line a little bit more, even out his three-point shooting, and the Spurs can build around him, not in the sense that he's going to be the absolute star of the team, but just have guys around him that can shoot the ball, it's only going to help him. And another guy that, if he has shooting around him, it's only going to help is Keldon Johnson. Just a bulldog. He's just a bulldog. Someone else that could do with getting to the rim a little bit more in the free throw line, because when he gets there, he finishes. I remember in the bubble, that was something that really stood out. He was getting to the free throw line about 5 to 6 times a game, consistently just downhill, an absolute dog, a menace. He's a menace. That's what he is. He attacks the boards. He's a 6'4" Zion Williamson. That's what he is inside. He's also got some shooting touch from outside. If he can, again, like Dejounte, even out that three-point shooting, then you've got a star on your hands, because they talked about him highly at Team USA. This is someone that's going to get so much experience from Team USA. Pop, a little sneaky one bringing him along, but shout out to him. I heard Draymond Green say he was a huge benefit to the team because of the intensity and the energy and he brought, and that's the kind of player he is. It's no surprise that he goes into a Team USA training camp and is bringing energy. That's what you're going to expect from Keldon Johnson. He does that every single night. He's just, at the very least, you're getting someone that's going to crash the boards, attack the rim, and shoot a decent amount from the three-point line, but it's about him now refining different aspects of his game. He took a leap. He's going to have to take another leap, and he's going to consistently, hopefully, get better. I think that Team USA experience will be huge, which is a reason why Pop brought him along. Pop knows what he's doing. Pop knows what he's doing. Those are the 2 guys that I'd say right now are at the top of the pecking order when it comes to the Spurs' young talent. Things could change. Things could change because Devin Vassell looked good in Summer League up until he got injured. He looked good at different times in the season. He's going to get more opportunity. I want to see him take players off the dribble a little bit more, show off a little bit more self-creation. Already, he looks like he's going to be a great defender for years to come. He's smart, he's intelligent, he's got length as well, similar to Dejounte Murray. He's a good off-the-ball defender, which is normally the biggest knock on a young player when it comes to defense. So for him to already be good in that aspect of the game is impressive. He's impressive all across the board, but he just needs to improve different aspects. He needs to improve more of a self-creator, which he did show in Summer League in signs. It's going to be a work in progress for Devin Vassell. I don't expect as big of things from him as soon as this year, but I'm still excited to see what he can do because he definitely has some potential on both ends of the floor. In terms of another guy that started in Summer League, or at least was a little bit of a surprise, was Trey Jones. He's worth noting because I could see him being a nice spark plug off the bench. They lost Patty Mills, different kinds of players, but Trey Jones, there's a kind of mold that they're going for. You see these guys with two-way, with intensity, Dejounte, Keldon, Devin Vassell, Trey Jones as well as a bit of a two-way player that has intensity on both ends of the floor. He showed some aggression attacking the rim as well. He's someone that's just going to give you nice productive minutes. He's a nice passer. He's a nice playmaker. He can get downhill. He can get inside. If his shooting can stay consistent, I expect him to get some decent minutes. Josh Primo is someone I've talked about, the guy they just drafted. He's a project player. He fits along the lines of what I just talked about with the Spurs and the whole ideology of the Spurs right now for me, which is they've got the base filled out. They've got what they need. They've got a lot of talent, a lot of role player kind of level players that might turn out to be a little bit more. Primo is the one that they're hoping could be a star. He's got the intangibles. He's got length. He's got athleticism. He's got shooting. He's got a lot of confidence as well. I've seen him in games. He's not afraid. He's not afraid to take that shot. He's the youngest player in the draft. He's got all of those things that could make him a star. Yes, it seemed like a little bit of a reach to some people. For me, I don't really care because because they've got that depth and talent that they can afford to take a reach, and you can always go out and get a Doug McDermott in free agency or a Zach Collins in free agency, guys that are going to be solid role players. Jock Landau from overseas, who's worth mentioning. I actually think he's going to be fantastic for the Spurs. In the Olympics, he was fantastic. So if you question what he could do against NBA level players, he played well pretty much every stage of the Olympics. He can stretch the floor. He's got an inside game. He's pretty decently versatile defensively as well. I love what Jock Landau does. I think you're going to love it as well. I'm not just saying that as an Australian. I think as of right now, those are the guys that interest me the most and are probably at the top of the priority for the Spurs development. But you look across the board, Jakob Poeltl is really impressive as a rim protector. He might not be the most versatile, which is why you bring in a Landau and a Collins, and you look for some different aspects, some guys that can shoot the ball and maybe be a little bit more switchable, but he's going to do the things that he does really well. And that's the same for Derek White as well, someone who's a good two-way guard. He looks like he was breaking out in the bubble, averaged like 20 points. This season, unfortunately, had the injury and just couldn't quite get back to his form, but if he can show off that form that he had in the bubble, I guess there's another guy to add to the mix. Obviously not a star, but just a high-end role player. There's a little bit of a trend for these Spurs players. As I mentioned, there's a lot of guys that are probably high-end role players. That might be their ceiling, which is why, looking forward, I would like to see them slip out of the playoff race this season, even though I wouldn't absolutely guarantee it. I know a lot of people are predicting them to be rock bottom or towards the rock bottom of the Western Conference, which off talent, you look at the Timberwolves who finished towards the bottom last season, and now they've got Karl Anthony Towns and D'Angelo Russell and Anthony Edwards. It's hard to imagine a Spurs team with this kind of roster at the moment finishing above it, but even Thaddeus Young comes in as a really solid role player who could make a big difference. You've got a lot of guys that are solid. Dejounte Murray might take a leap. Keldon Johnson might take a leap. Zach Collins, who knows what he could be? Who really knows? He's looked okay when he's played. He just has never really played. Doug McDermott had a fantastic season. This isn't a team that I look at and say they're absolutely terrible, particularly when Greg Popovich is your coach. I think the way they're going to go about business is just making sure they get development into all of their players. Lonnie Walker is a guy I didn't mention, but he could be a spark plug off the bench. He's an exciting scorer. You've got Lucas Samanic that I do want to see some more things out of Luka, but I know he was a project player. He played more this season than last. If he can hopefully continue to progress and show off different skills. I saw him at times and he looked pretty decent, but then at times I imagined he wasn't quite as good, which is a reason why his minutes were inconsistent. But I know Spurs fans are still relatively high on him. At least the last time I talked about the Spurs, they were. And when I saw him, he was pretty decent, but I obviously didn't get to see every single Spurs game like you guys, so you'd have to let me know what Samanic looks like and what your potential thoughts are on him. I'm interested to hear. There's a lot to like about the San Antonio Spurs. I think if they can somehow find that star, whether it's through Keldon or whether it's through the draft, that's the next step for them. That's what I'm looking to see.